Hey everyone, it's Tim from timguyner.com, and I'm making this video today as a follow-up to my online painting lesson, Iris and Butterfly, which you can see here. If you haven't taken this lesson yet, you can find it on my website, timguyner.com, as well as many other lessons. I like to create follow-up videos to go over some of the things that can be improved upon based on some of the images I've seen, or to give you some tips and tricks to take the painting to another level. So today I'm going to be doing both. For the Iris and Butterfly lesson, the butterfly is pretty straightforward. It's just kind of a drawing lesson where you draw out the butterfly and then block in the overall shapes. A few little color transitions, but nothing too major. So I'm not really going to talk too much about the butterfly today. For the Iris, one of the things I've noticed in some of the images that have been posted by some of the people who have taken the lesson is that the transition between the colors or values from blue to kind of the whitish blue, it sometimes can be a little too drastic or too white too quickly. So one of the things that you really want to focus on when painting a flower like this that has a lot of kind of draping petals is very smooth, slow transitions from dark to light. With this flower, there's not a lot of darks. It's kind of at a mid-tone and works its way up to a lighter value. Some of the lessons I saw, the white was worked up a little bit too quickly. And that can happen if you use titanium white rather than zinc white. Zinc white is more transparent, so it gives you some more flexibility when you're working your way up to value. So if you're using titanium white, my suggestion is just to add less titanium white each mixture, so that way you get smoother transitions. There's a couple of tips and tricks I want to show you on how to go back in and darken and lighten some of the colors, as well as adding in some further detail to the petals. So what I'm going to do is have you zoom in, and we're going to go over some of those things really quickly here. Okay, I have some cobalt blue and some zinc white for this tips and tricks video. I've also got a small flat brush. And one important thing about this brush is the bristles are very short. And that means it won't hold that much paint or water. And that's important for this tip that I'm going to show you. Sometimes when we create a flower like this, we have to go back and add in some dark colors, or we want to add in some lighter colors without making it too bright too quickly. Okay, so what I'm going to do is take some of my cobalt blue and some water. And what I'm going to do is thin out the cobalt blue. So this is a pretty dark color. And I want to add lots of water to it. So like I mentioned, this brush won't hold that much paint or water, which is important. If you don't want to use water, you can use acrylic flow medium too. But if I want to darken up a spot and I want to go really gradual, what I want to do is just take mostly water or flow medium and just a little bit of cobalt blue. And I want to use a brush that doesn't hold much paint because I want it to layer slowly. So I'm going to take that brush, and let's say I wanted to darken this portion just a little bit. With just a tiny bit of that water, moisture, and paint on the brush, I can block in that area that I want to darken a little bit. And sometimes what I do is just take my finger and wipe around the edges, so that way it's not hard edges where you're layering. So since I blocked in here, I would just scrub out this edge a little bit with my finger. And that just darkened it slightly more than what it was before. And what I would do, if I wanted to darken other areas, let's say I wanted to darken this little piece here. Just a little bit of color, and then just kind of take my finger and scrub out the edge so I don't get a sharp edge. But again, I'm using a brush that won't hold too much paint, so that way it builds up really, really slowly. If I wanted to darken this piece, or in here, pretty much any spot you go over with this color will darken it up a little bit. So that's a way you can darken areas without taking a whole bunch of paint and trying to layer it on there and then trying to match the transition back in. If you just use a thin little wash, you can block in a spot and then just kind of scrub out the edges with your finger. So what I like to do, if I really wanted to darken a spot up a lot, I would start, let's say I wanted to darken this spot up a lot, I would start here. Then I'd go around the painting, adding in a few little darker spots wherever else I wanted to darken up. And as soon as that dried, I would come back and do another layer with this really thin, watery paint. And then the more you do that, the darker it's going to get. So that way you can gradually transition into darker spots. So once you've kind of finished, you can kind of evaluate your flower and say, well, maybe I want to darken some of these little ridges right here. And you can take that little thin amount of paint with a brush that doesn't hold too much and just darken up little spots like that. You can also do the same thing with lighter color. I have zinc white here. And let's say I wanted to lighten up a little bit as it comes into the middle of this flower. With a really thin layer of paint, I can lighten it up. I can even overlap into some of my other colors because I'm using zinc white, so it's semi-transparent. And I can slowly lighten up some of these spots without going too drastic. Okay, and again, what I would do is I'd lighten up some spots, I'd move around the entire flower. And then if there was a spot I really wanted to brighten up even more, I'd go back and layer again a second, third, fourth time as it dries each time. It's better if you let it kind of dry a little bit each time. So that's why I work around the entire flower and then come back. Okay, and another tip for today, I have the liner brush here, or a small pointed round, whichever you prefer. And what I can do is add in some of the veiny details. If you look at these flowers up close, the reference photo for this is on the lesson page. So if you have taken the lesson, you'll have access to that reference photo. And you can look at the photo up close and see that there's all these little veiny things going through the petal. So with a liner brush and some really thinned out paint, you can add in some of these little veins. And I'm not really looking at the reference photo right now, I'm just kind of making it up. But I like to go through and add in some of those little veiny pieces at the end. And that adds another element to the flower. So that's kind of the final detail thing you can add in if you want. You can see I've kind of already done it in some spots. But if you keep it really, really thin, the lines will stay really subtle. Almost like you have to look at the painting up close to see it, which is kind of cool. So that's one of the final little touches you can add in at the end. Okay, so to recap, what we did is we took some water or some acrylic flow medium and we thinned out some of our darker colors with a brush that doesn't hold that much paint. It doesn't have to be a flat brush, but you want to use something maybe with short bristles that will hold just a small amount of paint and water and layer over some of those darker areas with really, really thin, watery paint. And what you want to do is slowly work it up. Do 4, 5, 6 layers. Let it dry in between each time, but do 4, 5, 6 layers to build up some of those darks if you need to make a spot darker. You can also do the same thing with the lights. I like to use zinc white because it's semi-transparent and you can build it up really slow. If you don't have zinc white and you just have titanium white, what you can do is add more flow medium or more water to thin it out even more. And that way you can do the same type of thing with a more opaque paint because the water or flow medium is actually going to make that paint more transparent. So I like zinc white, but if you only have titanium white, you can do that as well. And then we used a liner brush, added in some of those little veins in the petals just to make a nice finishing detail to the painting. Like I said before, if you haven't tried this painting lesson out yet, you can find it from start to finish on my website, timgagne.com. I have this lesson and many others that you can try out. If you're already on timgagne.com and you've tried the lesson, make sure you post your progress on the Facebook group page or ask any questions that you might have. So those are my tips and tricks and follow-up for iris and butterfly. And also, if you enjoy the framing of this painting, make sure you check out AmericanFrame.com, and you can get 20% off your first order if you use coupon code TGAGNERD20. That's TGAGNON20. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.